The NHL and the NBA Finals are set. Where in the NHL, you have a rematch of last year's Stanley Cup. You've got the Edmonton Oilers going up against the Florida Panthers, while in the NBA, you have the Indiana Pacers going up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And here is who I'm cheering for in both leagues. So in the NHL, I'm going to go with the Edmonton Oilers, and it is strictly a financial reason. The way that I always have used free bets when it comes to betting sites is when I am offered a risk-free bet or really any free bet, I take that free bet, no matter how much money it is, and I put it on a futures bet. I'll put it on who I think is going to be the champion, whether it be baseball, football, basketball, hockey, you name it. It really depends on the season and what's going on. That way, that when the playoffs do end up rolling around, I have some stake in the game, and those little tiny bets end up adding up. For example, when the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, I had so many futures bets on the Eagles that I had roughly $800 in the Eagles to win the Super Bowl dating back from week 1 that was just on futures bets. And most of these bets, by the way, are like $5 max. Some of them are like as low as $1.87 just because I have $1.87 in my account. You know, you get a risk-free bet for like any player to hit a home run. You're like, all right, whatever, I'll put $1.87 on it. Get my money back. I'll put $1.87 on a futures bet. And I did that with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, for a lot of you out there, you're like, that's small potatoes. You are correct. I don't want to be addicted to gambling. So I scratch my itch that way with small bets, but you end up taking all of these $1, $2, $5 bets, you throw them up on the futures bet with good odds, and come playoff time, if your team ends up getting to the championship, I'm looking at a pretty nice payout. For me at least, it's just extra money where I normally, you get a $2 extra free bet and you just put it on like a random game. No, I put it to a futures bet. I did that with the NHL this season, and originally I had the New York Rangers because I thought that their team was good and they came undone, and then I went with the Edmonton Oilers, and I'll usually do that. I'll usually start to hedge a little bit. So for the NFL, for example, I take the team that I think is going to win the Super Bowl. Then I take, let's say that's an NFC team. I will then hedge my bet halfway through the season with who I think the AFC would have. So that way I'm just guaranteeing myself money. And then the last third of the season, I just take kind of like a hot team that I think could make some noise in the playoffs. And that also has worked out for me. In this example, though, I have the Edmonton Oilers. I think roughly if they win, and it's not a ton, but I get like $250. And right now, that'd be cool, right? Who's saying no to $250? But I actually do think they have a really good chance of winning. And the reason why is because, and I think this gets forgotten about in sports a lot of times, when you have some of these teams that have gone on really, really deep runs, and then they go on a deep run again, and then a deep run again, it adds up. You're adding half a season to your body. So when you look at the Florida Panthers, they won the Stanley Cup last year. Okay, so let's rewind. They're in the Stanley Cup this year. They won the Stanley Cup last year. They went to the Stanley Cup the year before that. The year before that, they got to the second round. Like, that's a lot of extra hockey for this core group that has really been together for a while now. Does that finally take a toll? Do they finally run out of gas, if you will? For the Edmonton Oilers, they got to the Stanley Cup last year. They fought their way back and forced the Game 7 only to lose. Anybody who has watched the Amazon Prime series on the playoffs, if you haven't, do so. It's tremendous. But you see how much Connor McDavid truly cares about winning. And now that he knows what it's going to take, I think he's completely dialed in. Like, I remember watching them play in the first round against the Kings. And, the Kings were about to jump out to, I want to say, a 2-0 series lead. And they ended up getting scored on with like 30 seconds to go in the third period. Edmonton pulled a goalie, and I was like, that's the series right there. And Edmonton ended up winning in overtime. Now it's 2-1 of the series, but I was like, they lost the series in that game, and sure enough, they did. Because it kind of woke up Edmonton. And I think Edmonton is a group that probably needed that a little bit. The question with Edmonton is always going to be like, their goaltending isn't great. Can their big guns deliver, unlike the Toronto Maple Leafs big guns, who always seem to come up short in the playoffs? And I think McDavid is going to have these guys completely dialed in, and he's going to be on another level. I mean, he won the Conn Smythe last year, so I think it's going to be his time. I like seeing great players finally win. I was never a huge Alexander Ovechkin fan, but when he won a cup, I was happy for him because I just hate when these generational talents don't end up winning. And for Connor McDavid, I think it's just a matter of when, but I think that when is this year. And then on the flip side, for the NBA, my reason for picking this team is purely out of spite. I hope the Indiana Pacers win the NBA Finals. Twofold, but the biggest one is spite. The minor one is I want to see TJ McConnell win. Full transparency on this one, I was never a TJ McConnell fan. Like when he came into the league, I was rolling my eyes like, look at this Rudy. Look at this go hard. Jeez. TJ McConnell has turned himself in to a really good player that you can point to when you have, if you have kids and you just go like, look at him. He got the most out of his ability and then some. This is a guy who scratched and clawed his way to a really nice long NBA career where he's gained the respect of just about everybody because of his story, because he had to work his ass off for it. None of it was really all that God-given. He just worked his ass off, and I like seeing those kind of guys get rewarded. The bigger reason, though, is spite, and it's because I hate the fact that Sam Presti is lauded by the media. The media fangirls over Sam Presti as if he is the greatest general manager of all time. As if he at one point didn't have Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. Traded them for like nothing. Look, he's done a good job. I mean, the Paul George trade, getting Shea was crucial. But he did the Sam Hinkie model, and Sam Hinkie walked so that Sam Presti could run. Sam Hinkie gets looked at as a failure and a joke, while Sam Presti gets looked at as a genius. They did the same thing. They did the exact same thing. Sam Presti lost on purpose. He just wasn't as vocal about it, but Sam Presti lost on purpose. To his credit, Sam Presti ended up hitting on those draft picks. He ended up getting a player in Lou Dort that no one really thought was going to be much. But you end up getting Chet Holmgren. Whereas Sam Hinkie, it wasn't so much the case. Yeah, you get Joel Embiid, but then you also take Jahlil Okafor because you had no bedside manner because Kristaps Porzingis didn't want to come to your team so badly he was faking throwing up to get out of a workout. That's not a good look. You do wonder if Sam Hinkie had more time with the organization, if he wasn't forced out by the NBA, would the Sixers be in a similar situation? I don't know. I don't think Sam Hinkie was going to continue to asset collect, but it makes you wonder. And as a Hinkieite, as a guy that trusted the process, as a guy that did always appreciate his forward-thinking logic with like, this is really simple. We need good players. How do you get good players to draft? I'm going to compile a really bad team. Hope to God those players end up panning out. I wanted more justice for Sam Hinkie, and to see Sam Presti take his model, do the same thing, and get the credit for it, it pisses me off. If you're upset about that, then so be it. Hit thumbs down for that. All right, you guys know where the buttons are. The thumbs down button, as I just alluded to, the thumbs up button, subscribe button. It'd be cool if you hit that. If you don't, whatever. Who are you guys cheering for out there? So you have the Panthers versus the Edmonton Oilers, and you've got the Pacers versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. You can also hit thumbs down because I feel like I just had a mini stroke and I forgot who was actually playing in these games. Thank you for watching.